Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you all so much for coming to ACEF SLB's Winter Bootcamp. We're all really excited to have you all here. Just as an intro to the camp, this is a 5-day bootcamp focused on giving you all the skills that you'll need to be successful with your science fair projects. This week, we hope to take you guys along the whole pipeline of creating a project, helping out with everything, starting with topic selection and doing background research, and then going through all the various steps that need to be taken in scientific research, and then ending off with some preparation for the actual fair. So let's get started.
Okay, so we're gonna do a quick overview of the actual schedule for this week. So today we're just gonna be focusing on your topic selection and research paper overview. So we're gonna go over the structure of a research paper, how to read them, and give you the resources to actually use them for your science research. Tomorrow we'll be going into hypothesis generation, so kind of narrowing down your topic and forming a research question. And day three, we'll be going over methodology, how to design an experiment, and how to effectively and safely execute them for science research. Then day four will be data analysis and conclusion. We'll be going over different methods. You can analyze data that you get, different different visual representations, and we'll be going over conclusion. And the final day, we're going to be finalizing your project ideas. So you have like a rough structure for your ASEF project, and we're going to do mock judging, where you can test out and communicate your project to judges. So for today specifically, this is what we have planned. We're first going to start off with a guest speaker, and then we're going to move on into a research paper workshop where you'll be introduced to the structure of a research paper, how to read them, and and then we'll have a break, and then we'll go into actual activities involving papers where you can start doing background research. Then we'll have a Kahoot, and then we'll finally just go over some resources that you guys could use to help with your projects. So I'm going to hand it off to our guest speaker today, Aditi.
Great. Thank you, Yuhan, and thank you, Sharia, for kind of putting this together. And really, really good job done by the activities division as a whole. Super excited to see all of you guys. I saw in response to Felix's message in the chat that we kind of have people who are kind of here for the first time, as well as people who have participated in ACSCF before. I will say that historically, the boot camp has been very useful for both first-time participants as well as returning members. And so I'm really, really excited to see all of you guys here and see that you guys are kind of wanting to get to the next level in the fair. So my name's Aditi. I participated in the fair for I think 6 years. I started in sixth grade and I went all the way until my junior year. I graduated last year. Currently, I'm a freshman at Stanford. And so I've had a little bit of time, not too much, just a bit of time to be able to reflect on how the science fair has kind of shaped my intentionality with what I want to do in the future and how it's kind of shaped where I am right now. And so, obviously, everyone's journeys with FAIR, with research, with their education is very, very different. There's no one or two things that I could say, hey, do this, and you'll end up here. There's nothing that I could say to say that, but kind of, I just wanted to take this time today to share some things that I learned along my journey regarding research, as well as the potential that it has to kind of shape what you'd want to do in the future. So in the past, my research interests kind of focused on a wide range of things, really, but they were all kind of centered on my interest in engineering principles and in material science. And so I started out kind of looking at polymers like bioplastics, looking at filtration systems. Then I kind of jumped over to looking at sustainable energy applications, designing nanoparticles for them, and kind of outside of science fair, I also got involved with projects working with materials for applications in biotechnology. And I think not being focused on one sole application, but rather being more interested in the science of it all kind of helped me um, be really open to a bunch of different projects and really helped me gain experience in many fields. And I think that that's something that's super, super useful just going into a world that's more like tool oriented. Next slide, please. Um, yeah, so I just like to share a little bit about my science fair journey. I'll talk for about 5, 6 more minutes, and then I'll leave it open for another 5 more minutes in case you guys have any questions. But like I mentioned, I started out with science fair in sixth grade. I actually went to a school where there was a really, really nice program set up, a nice pipeline through which I could do my projects at school. And my science teacher had experience kind of promoting students through ACSEF. And so for me, it was really nice to have that person in my school who knew what was going on. And so I know ACSEF has kind of been trying to promote that through kind of having parent sponsors in various schools. So if you want to get in touch with that person for your school, I would 100% recommend that. It's really, really helpful to have someone be there for you as a point of contact, whether it comes to filling out forms, which I know all of you guys have been working so hard on, or registration or project ideation. So definitely try to find that like contact within your school who kind of knows what's going on. Super helpful. Um, and so that year was kind of the catalyst for it all. We actually didn't have ACSEF that year. We actually ended up being directed to the Golden Gate Science Fair. And so I was fortunate enough to be promoted to CSEF. And I think that was my first time where I was really overwhelmed just by the sheer complexity of projects. And if any of you guys have yet to experience it or have already experienced the feeling of just like walking down those rows and seeing so many different projects that are phenomenal, rest assured that I felt that many, many, many times, and so have many other successful science fair participants. And so I think just my advice for your first year of participation would be to soak it all in, talk to the people around you. Maybe they've participated before and really listen to them and learn from their experiences. I really enjoyed getting to know the booths around me at CSEF and ACSEF my first year. And I really took that year as like a learning experience. The following year, I think COVID hit, and what I learned from those couple of years, I think I was in seventh and eighth grade, was really the importance of ingenuity. So I know some of you guys might be doing your research projects at an official lab, which is phenomenal. You know, you've done the cold emailing, you've set up those connections, and you have a really solid place to work. But I want to also encourage those of you who haven't been able to do that thus far into the year, that it's very, very much possible to continue your science fair project at home. In fact, all of my science fair projects were conducted in what I like to call my home laundry room turned laboratory. All you need is some counter space. Again, it depends on what discipline you're kind of testing in. But for me, I was able to kind of set that environment up and I funded it with the prize money that I earned in following years. But I think all of that was just to say that it's really important that you remain resilient and that you kind of remain adaptable when it comes to experimentation. Kind of look for substitutes, look for alternative chemicals, things like that. Um, Fast forward kind of to high school, I wasn't too sure how doing science fair would pan out in high school. I had a little bit of success. In middle school, I went to Broadcom. I was a top 300 scholar. But I think high school is really when it became kind of real for me because I feel like a lot of the projects once you get to the high school level are just like almost PhD level topics, which is so impressive. Um, and I think it's really intimidating to come into that as a freshman. So for all of my freshmen out there, it's going to be okay. Just again, take it as a learning experience and talk to those around you. But it was actually in high school where I really learned the importance of having a good mentor. For me, that was my chemistry science teacher. She had kind of been working in a very similar space that I was interested in, which was like energy research. And so I was able to have these really, really in-depth conversations with her about the literature, not in a sense where she was kind of giving me the information that I needed, or like telling me what to do. I think that that might not be as productive for you as a science fair participant, but rather kind of treating me as an intellectual peer where we would just have these conversations about papers that I would talk to her about. And so I would definitely encourage all of you guys to find that person, whether it's a teacher, whether it's someone that you reach out to. I think that it's very, very valuable to have someone like that on your team. And so, kind of learning about all those stuff from a mentor figure was super important for me. And here I just want to give a quick plug to SLB's rolling mentorship program. So, I ended up having a teacher mentor, but I myself also served as a student mentor for a couple of students. Um, Throughout high school. And I can say without a doubt that the people that I've worked with SLB, the people who are running the program right now, have so much experience with science fairs and with very, very specific niche subjects. And I think that it's just a super, super valuable experience to be able to just ask someone who's gone through the process, those questions. And the way that a rolling mentorship program has been structured, it's very, very easy where you're in and out, kind of like office hour type sessions. And so would 100% recommend that you join. Finally, so yeah, I was really, really honored to be able to go to ISEF. I truly hope that you guys do have the experience of either being able to go to CSEF or ISEF. But kind of through that and through Regeneron STS, I really learned the importance of communication, which I think you guys are also going to find super useful. You know, you guys are doing some really complex stuff, and you might know what you're doing, but judges might not always know what you're doing. And so, as important as it is to be a really intellectual and really complex scientist, it's equally important to understand your audience and the application of what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, you know, you're not just going to be like a mad scientist, like locked in a lab. You're kind of, you want these technologies to be translated into commercial applications, into the real world. They're going to help somebody. And so, kind of focusing on developing your speaking skills, your writing skills. I think as a high school science fair participant, those are the things that you should slowly start to look at when you're applying to competitions like ISEF and STS. Um, I think I'm just going to go and wrap it up there. I kind of went through my entire science fair journey, some lessons that I learned. I also had the opportunity to be the co-president of SLB in my junior and senior year. I served in various leadership roles at SLB before that. So I would 100% recommend joining during our next cycle. If, regardless of whether you're a successful science fair participant or just a science fair participant, we need people like you who are passionate about communication and about science in general. And so, if any of that resonates with you, I would 100% recommend applying. It's a really, really fulfilling experience. With that, I think I'll open the floor for any questions that you might have. Feel free to unmute. And then Sharia and Yuhen, whenever you feel that time is up, feel free to kind of jump in and cut me off.
Oh, if you guys have any questions, you can raise your hand and speak out, or you can just type it in the chat. You can just feel free.
Yeah, go ahead, Leo.
What would you say is the most important part of the research project that we should focus on?
That's a good question. First of all, I would recommend, I don't know if ACSEF still does this. I believe they do, but if you're referring to most important as in like the outcome of it in terms of promotion and whatnot, I would take a look at the rubric. I think they generally update it every year based on their judging criteria. From what I remember, I think a couple of things really stand out as being like most essential for your project. I think originality is a really big factor. So as a part of that, you know your methodology, how you're using creativity when you design your experiment, is super, super important. And with that comes things like project ideation. So a lot of you guys have already, I believe, submitted your initial interest in ACSEF in that form. And you know, SRC IRB is really encouraging you guys to be super original with the stuff that you're putting out there. And so I think those two things are very, very important. But one more thing I would mention is communication. So really being able to talk about why your project is important and why it matters. Because at the end of the day, you know, that's what judges are going to be taking home or taking to the discussion room, if that makes sense. I think there's one more person. Oh, if you have any other questions, feel free to follow up. But I see Katev. Katev.
Yeah, hi. So I'm just entering high school now. I'm a freshman. And so this is going to be my first year in ACSEF as a, high school doing the high school projects. And I'm a little scared about the competition, but I'm happy to know my project is super original, but I just want to know, but how should I like present it? Is there like a different way to, for example, in middle school, a lot of like the you know how you presented the trifolds? They were all like, very like handwritten and like, is there something special to the high schoolers, like how to put like the data on? Does everything just need to be text? Just wondering about that, like professionality.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Sharia, you guys are probably going to touch on this when you kind of get to the stage of like, oh, presenting your project, mock judging and whatnot. And I think SRC IRB also has some really useful resources for it. I do agree there is like a step up from middle school to high school that I do notice. I think that, for example, people start stacking trifolds, they start printing out stuff on pages and sticking them, or they start printing out whole sheets of paper. I think that once we get to like the data presentation section of the boot camp, I'm sure there's going to be specific tips about like how to put data into graphs and things like that. But on the whole, yeah, I think like things like printing out stuff and just making sure that everything was really sleek and neat, does count for some points, but rest assured that like your board is not going to be like the end all be all of like whether you get promoted. And I feel like it's just going to be something that helps the judges kind of it's complementary to what you're talking about in your presentation. But yeah, if you have any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them in the chat. Um, how many questions do you think we have time for? Feel free to cut me off. Um,
We'll probably move on at 3:25. So
325? Okay, great. Hopefully I can get through the people with their hands up, and then I will answer the ones in the chat. Or Faye can also answer, or Felix can also answer the ones in the chat as well. Um, I don't know who had their hands up first. I'm just going to go in order. Avigna?
Yeah, so I'm also a freshman in high school. This is my first year doing ASEP. How can you tell if your topic is unique or like complex enough to win against the competition? And do you know if it's judged based on category? Like, for example, would the medically related projects be judged along the engineering ones, or is that a different category?
Okay. Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Like I said, so your first year is going to be um, kind of tricky to gauge whether your project is quote unquote complex enough to be promoted. Since you're just starting out with your first year, I would definitely recommend moving forward with what you have. But first of all, taking a look at what projects are in your year. So walking through those rows and really taking stock of like what people are thinking about. Um, the second thing I would recommend doing is like going to past science fair participant winning projects and maybe taking a look at that, maybe taking a look at like some key factors of originality that they kind of focused on. I think that's sometimes helpful to kind of gauge. But again, every year it's different. You know, sometimes you see more AI/ML projects, sometimes you see more of these. And with regards to the topic, so I believe, and I don't remember if this is true for this year, because again, judging criteria changes every year. I believe that for category awards, you're judged within like projects of your category. But in terms of promotion to things like CSCF and ISEF, although they do try to make sure there's like an even distribution of like CS, medical, chemistry, I'm probably forgetting, oh, environmental science topics, and I'm probably forgetting a bunch of categories here. You know, you are kind of being judged across um, categories. So, a bio project would be compared to the rigor of an engineering project. So it honestly depends um, on like the projects that make it to round two, like how they're compared. But in general, I think for most of the years that I've seen, they've been pretty equitable in their distribution.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yibin?
Hi, I have a question. So, when the judges are reviewing my working log, how much will they review and how much does the working log worth in terms of judging? Because I have a very long log, like
Mhm.
now it's around 34 pages. It will be longer.
Okay, wait, that's really good. I think, again, I repeat this many, many times. It's been almost 2 years since I've actually participated, so the rules keep getting updated. I don't know if it's required. Again, you will know this best. I think for me, in the years that I participated in, the lab notebook was most helpful to judges in kind of pointing to specific moments in my research process where I shifted my methodology, for example, if they asked about that. Or it was just there at my booth. And I think there was a period of time when judges were allowed to walk around and they would just like flip through my lab notebook and kind of see. I think the lab notebook is really just there to give you credibility as a scientist and to prove kind of that you've gone through the thought process of it all yourself and that you've worked it through. I would not worry about the lab notebook being too long. If anything, that proves that you're really going through the rigor of it all. But at the same time, if you feel like your lab notebook is too short or anything like that, I don't think there's like an optimal length. I think that as long as you're putting down all your thoughts on paper, your data, whatever project ideation processes you went through, the research, the analysis, all of that, I feel like should make a pretty solid composite. Hope that answered your question. Sanvi?
Hi, yeah, so my question was like a little specific to like the part where you're talking about like how you made like a lab at home. I was wondering how were you like able to do that? Because that kind of like interested me. How you
Oh
able to
yeah,
do that at home?
I'm glad to hear that. I think for me, obviously a lot of the dangerous stuff that required chemical hoods I had to do in my high school lab. And so I had to work with SRC IRB to kind of get the approval for that. But for me, I always liked the idea of having more autonomy over my research experiments. I liked staying up until like 10 p.m. or like 12 a.m., kind of running experiments on my own time frame, especially because in high school it's really hard to like juggle a bunch of extracurricular commitments, as some of you might know. And so for me, I had like some basic glassware. I think I mainly stored my chemicals. I got permission from my school to store chemicals there. But yeah, mainly a lot of the stuff that I did at home was more like analysis. And so that's where I constructed my energy devices. I think if you're more intrigued by the DIY nature of it, I would definitely, I'm not really sure what area you're interested in. So again, if you're doing biology stuff, maybe not letting bacteria around your home. I would advise against that. But kind of getting conversation with SRC IRB and your teacher or your adult supervisor and having that conversation about what's safest, what's best for you. Yeah, if you have any other
You?
questions,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. If you have any more questions, put them in the chat. But I think
Yeah.
I'll stop.
I really love all these questions and I love how interactive it's been. It's great to know that everyone's really taking advantage of this opportunity to ask all the clarifying questions they can. But we do have to move on with the rest of the seminar. So up next, we are doing somewhat of an interactive activity, kind of just to get to know each other and things like that. But since there are so many of us in this one meeting, I will be breaking everyone into 5 different breakout rooms. So once you do that, then one SLB member will go to each room and will lead the interactive activity from there. So let me just send that out.